Thank you, Maggie. Thanks, Padma, and thank you, Maggie, for a wonderful introduction. And so you've done my bit introducing the Delhi NCR chapter. So I'm very delighted to, first of all, to have you all joining on a Friday evening for a little fireside chat with women entrepreneurs who have done commendable job in technology. So today only I got to know about the Women Entrepreneur Quest and how intense that process is. It is an annual contest which is organized by Anita Borg India. The amount of talent that come forward, put across their pitches out of so many candidates, so many online applications, and finally top 10 who get selected for the final finalization, and the winners who get the opportunity of a fully expense paid trip to Silicon Valley, to visit Silicon Valley and interact with the stakeholders, key stakeholders there. They get the opportunity of connecting with various investors, key companies, incubators, universities, and so on. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to the three eminent panelists today who are with us. So I'll quickly introduce the three panelists on with us today. So we have with us Suhani Mohan, winner of WEQ 2016, passionate about women's health and hygiene, Forbes Trailblazer, co-founder. She's the co-founder and CEO of Saral Design, a Mumbai-based startup which provides access to quality, affordable menstrual hygiene products to low-income women in India. Yep. So welcome, Suhani. Roli Gupta, again, WEQ winner, founder of Urjan Clean Tech, a Mumbai-based startup again, consumer solar startup, which envisioned that clean tech plus fintech plus IoT is equal to million solar roofs. Welcome, Roli. Thank you for taking out time today and talk to us. Lastly, we have Pallavi Gupta with us, WEQ winner of 2018, Espresso Labs. The company focuses and customizes smart speakers, Amazon Alexa, Google Home, so that they can be used as virtual concierge in hotel rooms. So guests can come and talk to in their native language. The device is smart enough to understand, translate, and automatically assign that task to the staff. So welcome all, and I'm very excited to learn from you, get inspired from you, and listen to your motivational stories. So we'll start with Suhani first. I'm sure, Suhani, you would have been asked this question multiple times, considering the experience, the achievements, accomplishments that you had. What do you, how do you want to share your story with us that motivates us and inspires us and the other people who have joined us today? So please share your story with us.
Thank you so much, Shikha, for the introduction, and I'm so glad to be sharing this platform with two of my good friends and WEQ winners and fellow entrepreneurs, Roli and Pallavi, and thank you for this opportunity. We started this journey in 2015 of starting Saral Designs, which is a healthcare startup. I have a background in both engineering and finance. I had done my engineering from IIT Bombay in metallurgy and material science, post which I was working in an investment bank for about 2.5 years. And that was when I realized that the situation of menstrual hygiene in India was very, very bad, where almost 70% of women in India were contracting reproductive tract infections due to lack of affordable and high quality sanitary napkins. So we thought of solving this problem using technology. Of course, being engineers, that's the first idea that sort of comes to our minds. So we realized that there were very high speed production units which multinational companies were using, or they were very small scale handheld technology like the Padman movie, etc., that people were using. And there were pros and cons in both of the approaches, but what we realized was there was no technology in between that could make high quality sanitary napkins at a decent scale, where local entrepreneurs and NGOs could produce products of the same quality as that of multinational products and also have a decent profit margin. So with that in mind, we designed India's first automatic machine to produce sanitary napkins. And so far we have partnered with 30 plus entrepreneurs who are doing these productions in various parts of India and 5 other developing countries. So coming to the current context and why all three of us are actually working together, I'll just share the screen so that it acts as a visual guide to what I'm trying to talk about. So I think around March, what we realized was there was a huge shortage of like personal protective equipment. And my brother being a doctor, I was seeing this firsthand that, you know, he had to personally go and buy things like masks, etc. from the shops. And to be able to like, we didn't have that production capacity because of course all across India a lot of products come from China, and suddenly China trade was stopped, and surgical masks were only used in medical applications before this, and suddenly people started hoarding it, and you know the prices increased 10 times. So me and my co-founder, we were discussing on what can we do, and we realized that our the raw materials used in sanitary napkins were fairly similar to those in surgical masks. And we thought, let's just make changes to one of our existing R&D machines that we have in our office to be able to start making surgical masks. So this was March 15th, and by the time our designs and everything were ready, March 21st, the lockdown was announced, and we were like stuck on now, how do we take this forward? But I think after being an entrepreneur for 5 years and seeing so many like hurdles in between, we have realized that you have to, you know, keep fighting and trying to make sure that you are able to achieve what you plan to. So I just wrote an email to a friend who worked in Mahindra and Mahindra, to tell her that, you know, we have all our designs ready, but we don't have any vendors who are open for making these machine parts that with which we can actually modify the machines. So she forwarded that email to Anand Mahindra, and within 4 hours we received a reply, which is even which is super fascinating, given, you know, he was also looking for technologists who he could support to increase the PPE production in India. And here are some pictures of his tweet, and he inaugurated the machine virtually on a webinar like this. And within like 100 hours of actually sending the email, we were able to start production at Mahindra & Mahindra's Mumbai facility, where we started production. So this was where we were, but you know, there was still like a struggle in terms of how do we make sure now that the production capacity is something that we have increased, but how do we now take these products to the masses? And that's when I think Roli stepped in. So I will let her continue this conversation on how, you know, she collaborated and got into the mission of working on distribution of PPEs.
All right. Thanks, Suhani. I think it is absolutely amazing to see, you know, at the time of need in India where, you know, we all are stuck and just trying to adjust to the situation. We have been, I mean, you changed the entire production and started to build, create those masks and make it available to various government entities. And it reaches to the right people. So thank you for that. So my question now to Roli. With WEQ communities coming together, we've started to partner, and it helps in fundraising. So would you also talk about how WEQ community has come together and it helps us, and how is this community helping now?
Yeah, absolutely. So to sort of follow on from where Suhani left, I think she was already on a path. She had a full team that they are working with at Saral Design. So I just want to step back a little bit and talk about how actually I got into this in the first place, because I wasn't making menstrual pads, right? So for me, it was a very different reason to sort of engage with this. we had been, like all of us, I think in March, we all realized that we are in for a long haul of something we don't know very well. And I have read a book recently which is helping me formulate these thoughts a little bit. I read the book later, but I did the stuff earlier. So it's more about, I guess, reframing. And I suggest that for people here who haven't read that book, please do read it. It's about 70 years old, but it's very valid. It's called Think and Grow Rich. Okay, so it is by Napoleon something, an American author, and it's he really does talk about how so many things just start with a thought, an idea. And this is where we as human beings differ from most other species, is that we can have a thought and we can continue to work on that thought and make something of it. So our thoughts are what basically takes the physicality over time. So to me, that was a good way to put a lot of, like, a lot of our aspirations and ambitions. So, so with that filter, kind of, I would say that what happened is that when a lot of the COVID issues were happening the world over, I started also looking at the data and realized that we don't know what we don't know right now. In fact, that's kind of where we are. So what can I do? And so the first thought was that I wanted to do more than just sort of take care of the family. That of course is the first thing, but I felt like there should be a way for me to use my network, use all the other sort of relationships that I've created over so many years of working, almost 20 years, that to be able to support more actively in the crisis. So that was sort of the initial inspiration, that can I be an active participant in helping solve the COVID issue in whatever big or small capacity. So that's sort of what was the initial idea. And then of course the next thing is, what could I do? Because we were in a lockdown and I wasn't able to move out like all of us. So what can I do? And that's where actually I think the rivers kind of met, and I came across the same tweet that Suhani shared of Anand Mahindra. And I have been following Suhani's work since actually we met at WEQ, although we are both from IIT Bombay, but we didn't have overlapping years. So I have been following her work since the WEQ program. So I would say WEQ has been very instrumental in us knowing each other and following our work. So I saw that, and then I said, okay, so I don't have a team right now. And I think what is needed is to be able to collaborate with an existing team who's already on a mission to help, rather than try to recreate something, because it didn't seem like we had enough time to sort of start recreating things. And I didn't have the skills to kind of go ahead and like start building a ventilator or other things like that. At least it wasn't an easy access for me at that time. So that's when I reached out to Suhani, and I think we were thinking similarly. I think she wanted to also do not only just sell the machines, but also see what we could actively do in terms of helping the frontline workers. And I think that general, I would say the beneficiary of our efforts, the frontline workers, I think both of us were pretty passionate about that we should actually do something for them, because they are on the front lines day in and day out. And there has to be a way to help them with Saral's product, and also with my efforts. So that's sort of where we started to, we decided on doing this fundraise to support 1.5 lakh masks, which will support about 10,000 frontline workers. Now, we can get more into that story as the webinar progresses, but coming back to the WEQ question that Shikha had, is that in trying to sort of create awareness about what we are doing, and just make more people sort of, get more supporters along the way. WEQ at the same time actually has started another open happy hour kind of a session every week. So the timing of all this is just like really coinciding in a very, very nice way. So in the first one, again, we presented what we are doing, Suhani and I, and that's how we got our third musketeer here, which is Pallavi. And she has also been a winner in the previous, one of the previous editions. And she got really, she also got super driven about what we were doing, because she's coming from a family of doctors, and I'll let her get more into that. And then we thought, okay, this is a bona fide WEQ entrepreneurs' effort. We were not knowing each other, and now we are coming together to serve a common need for the country right now. And that seemed pretty inspiring for all of us.
Nice. Thanks, Rolly. I think, first of all, thank you.
But the story, actually, the story is not finished there, because Maggie is there as well. And I think we are going to get some massive leverage from actually the organization now. So I think after all three of us collaborated, we said, okay, so now we are actually a WEQ effort. What can the organization do to help us take this further? And perhaps Maggie can get into it a little bit later. But now we are collaborating more organizationally. Earlier, we were doing it as an individual. Now we are saying, okay, so we're a group of women who have a common thread going on with the program that sort of got us together. And now can we, as a bigger group, try to in fact, multiply this impact?
Right. Right. I think there are some amazing, interesting numbers that you shared. 1 lakh mark, reaching 10,000 people, frontline workers. Thank you for completing that story. Of course, adding Maggie without her and this community establishing at the right time, and almost getting these synergies together as women entrepreneurs. I think that makes absolutely sense. So Pallavi, I would want to get your thoughts on why do you think that we need such initiatives today? Throw some light on there. As what do you feel about these initiatives helping you as women entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So I'll just actually start by saying that I also don't. Our company does not develop sanitary napkins. So for me, when I met Rolly and Suhani at one of the open house, so actually they are senior to me. They went to Silicon Valley before I did. So I just met them in a reunion, and these guys were talking about this initiative they had, and it immediately, like, I had the same thought process as Rolly did, that I really wanted to also help in an organization, help in in an initiative that's targeted towards helping the frontline workers, because coming from a family of doctors, I have personally seen, and also since I belong to Agra, which is one of the hotspots currently, I have seen a lot of people in my personal network getting affected by COVID-19. And what immediately struck me about the Saral Design initiative was that they were developing some really good quality 3-ply masks, and which are also disposable. So for us, I think I've seen the challenge in my family that my dad was at a point he couldn't get any N95 or a surgical mask, and he actually was just wrapping around a cloth around his around his mouth, and which isn't really, because for people who are on the front line, they really need these masks which have a certain level of quality for the protection. So I felt that pain, and when these guys came and talked to me about this initiative, I immediately wanted to help in whichever way I can. So I believe that this initiative, and especially in thanks to WEQ Open House that day, and I'm glad I attended it, and I'm very, very happy to be actually contributing in whatever means I can to this initiative. It feels good, and I think organizations like these, if women are connected with each other, then they can definitely do more and do better do better things. So yeah, I think organizations really work magically in that sense.
Absolutely. I think the power of community, I would absolutely agree to the fact that power of community is immense, and women coming together for such initiatives, I think at the time of need. And the fact that you mentioned, the scarcity of mask at a particular point in time, that was, we generally have that habit, Indians have that habit of hoarding things at home. The moment you start to listen to, and you just get panic in that situation, and you start to hoard things at home. And I personally encountered that situation when I was reaching out to the chemist and calling them that, do you have mask available? And I was getting the answers, there's no mask available, there are no surgical gloves available. But at the point of need, as we say, that innovation comes with when there is a need. Innovation automatically happens. So three of you joining together for such a cause, I think it's an amazing thing. Personally, I really, hats off. So proud to and really inspired to listen to such a story. So back to Suhani. There were, I'm sure, the kind of nuances which are involved when it comes to distributing or coming up with such an initiative and reaching out to the right people. What do you or you would want to share with us? What are the challenges that you faced while you were involved and merged in such an initiative?
I think operationally, this is one of the toughest times to be in manufacturing, where people actually have to be out. So I think for the first few days of the lockdown, it was not really clear on who will actually give the permit, where would we, get licenses to operate. So there was a lot of running around, and instead of actually spending time on innovating and making things, a lot of time went on to deal with the logistics of the lockdown, to reach out to people, go to police stations regularly, and get the approvals for people to come in. At the second level, I think logistics has become really, really difficult right now, and super expensive also. So most of the courier services have just recently reopened, and even cargos and trucks were something which were restricted for the first 10 to 15 days of the lockdown. So, a lot of times we would book a truck and they would cancel on us. So every time it was becoming really difficult to commit to the beneficiaries also, that today we are dispatching and then, oh, now we cannot dispatch. So it was, it's a very difficult situation to operate in. And the third most rather critical thing that we had to balance out was actually the team coming into the office. So we eventually had to convince people that the best option would be to divide ourselves into 2 shifts of 14 days, and 6 people stay in office, do the production, do the machine assembly and everything. And then the next batch comes in, so that, there's minimal interaction with the outside folks. Otherwise, operating in Navi Mumbai region itself is a very big health hazard. So those were the issues that, we were coming across.
Very interesting. It is really proud to have such people working in the time of need, and especially without worrying about, it could impact anybody any point in time. So thank you for all the efforts that you put together. Roly and Pallavi, I would also want to hear from you. The current situation, what do you think that from your side, when you got joined up with this initiative, what are the challenges that you face? Are there similar to what Suhani said, or is there anything specific that you would want to share with the group?
Roly, you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. So I can share a couple of things that I felt like they were unexpected in the course of this partnership. The first was, of course, fundraising. So I think on the fundraising side, I want to just go back to the earlier point actually on the partnership, and sort of say how, in fact, numbers say the story better there. So before, I think Subtle Designs has been doing a bunch of these fundraising campaigns for the menstrual hygiene thing for the last many years. I think normally they were able to raise 3 to 4 lakh is what normally on crowdfunding is sort of, I think, the ballpark that you are able to create by bugging your friends, family, and some sort of, extended network. So I think so. So for the audience here, I think it's kind of important to understand how these partnerships actually work in numbers. So when I came in, we started with the double that sort of the number to begin with. So you said, why don't we go for, actually we had started with 10 lakh. It just happened to be that Subtle Designs can now do the mask a little cheaper than what we thought. So we can now, in fact, achieve whatever they were able to do in a lesser price. But with the two of us, with Subtle Designs and myself, we already had doubled to about 7.5. So we said so you can multiply the impact by 2. And then Pallavi adds a little bit more to it. And now with Maggie in the picture and with a more of an institutional type of donors possibly adding to our campaign, we might even go 4x of what Saral Designs could have done by themselves, 4 to 5x. And that's sort of really what partnerships do, right? So where we were talking about 1.5 lakh masks, I'm pretty confident by the time we are done with this, we'll probably have done about 3 lakh masks that would have just gone on donation. And that's a fairly good size sort of, impact you can create on the ground with the kind of constraints that we are at. So how to go about this fundraising? I think it was, I had done fundraising for my own organization before, but this was quite different because you are going to friends, family, you are doing a lot more on social media. What I realized is actually social media is not very useful for such campaigns. The best things that work are in fact one-to-one phone calls and one-to-one sort of, just one-to-one interaction. It could be on email or whatever, but it cannot be a blanket. Blanket campaigns don't work. So we do post stuff on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all these other places. I don't think we've even gotten 10% of our fundraise through that. So I think that was something that I think it was new to me, that what is the right way to go about fundraising for a cause like this was new. The second thing new was on the beneficiary side, is that, of course, we started getting a lot of inquiries. There was the migrant workers, there were like private hospitals, there were just a lot, like so many people. They were like housing societies. We're based in Mumbai and there are tons of housing societies and the people there need masks, right? So even though you want to do good, you have to at some point say no, right? And say that, okay, these are the beneficiaries that we are going to focus on for this particular campaign, because otherwise your message kind of gets diluted and it becomes really difficult to sort of go back to donors and say why you are doing what you are doing. So I think that was new to me, that we were getting a lot of inquiries from just like why I didn't even know a lot of people who were calling about these masks, and I had to say no. And it kind of feels bad because they would think that, hey, you are giving masks for free, why can't you give it to us? And you have to say no. I think we're not giving it to individual citizens. We want to give it to people who are actually dealing with a lot more possibly infected people on a day in and day out basis. So that was sort of, in some sense, emotionally slightly challenging to come up to terms with that. So that's been a learning.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, Roli. Pallavi, anything you would want to add to it?
I think for me, since from the place where I come from and the kind of network I had, there were a lot of private institutions that are still in, they still require masks, but we had this filter criteria where we were kind of filtering out the beneficiaries so that we can really reach out to people and, organizations which don't have the funds in the first place to really afford those masks. So private institutions, like there's a demand all over, right? Even for, a private hospital also is treating patients for COVID. So they are also they also demand for it. But we have this beneficiary, shortlisting there. So I think if we're able to raise more, more funds, then I think we can even reach out to private institutions that are not very big. They don't have a lot of funds from the government, but are, they have their healthcare workers getting infected by this disease. And at the end of the day, I think we really want to help people irrespective of their organization. So I think more fundraise would kind of help us overcome that challenge.
Thanks, Pallavi. So my final question to all of you, one by one, we can take that. As women entrepreneurs, do you feel you have been, at some point you have been at an advantage and then some point you have been at a disadvantage? So as women entrepreneurs, would you want to share your story as a women entrepreneur? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages that you had to face personally? We can start with.
Right. I think we can keep the same order. I think, see, there are a lot of advantages now, and I think it is also to do a little bit with the the existing networks that we all come from in terms of like entrepreneurship and leveraging on that. So I am a female, my co-founder is a male, and we see that difference coming in, that a lot of times the seminars, conferences, accelerator programs are now being very, very focused to women. So even at an earlier stage, we are able to like access certain networks and funding opportunities, like in the early stages, a little more than if my co-founder was doing it alone. So those are certain advantages because we are so few that people really want to kind of encourage us and make sure that the success stories are made out of us. But on the other hand, of course, the larger society is, you would obviously, like, I'm sure everyone generally, not even as a entrepreneur, but generally as women, we face a lot of this stigma of being in the working space. So I remember just sharing a quick incident that because we are into manufacturing and that's not very common, assumption of where you place women to be working on. So there was a trade exhibition that we had gone to, that were displaying like machines and talking about what needs to be, how other entrepreneurs can get into setting up these machines. And one man in his 40s or something, he walks up to me and says that I want to talk about the machine. Who should I speak with? So I said that, I can talk about the machine. Like, no, I want to talk about the machine. So he just assumed that, I'm a female, I'm probably some salesperson who has been hired for the exhibition. Like in automobile industries, you see a lot of like models trying to sell the car. So he just assumed that I'm one of those people. So I had to tell him, no, I'm from IIT, I've done my engineering, to kind of break that barrier. So that happens so frequently that, there are these assumptions. People just walk in assuming that there are these gender norms around which we need to operate. And I'm just so glad that all of us are working in technology, hardware and everything, which is not assumed to be like the women's forte, and doing that pretty well. So I'm glad that we are able to break some of these assumptions, and it will just take time for people to get used to seeing more of us so that these assumptions no longer exist.
Yeah. Thanks, Swani. Rodi, anything you would want to share?
Actually, this can be its own session. I'm sure there's just so many things anecdotally that we come across. But I want to share something which I feel is a disadvantage that women give themselves, and I think it's a psychological disadvantage. So one of the learnings from the WEQ, actually Silicon Valley tour, was, and I think Suhani will remember this as well, almost everybody we met there, all the venture capitalists and the guys who sort of seem to have made it in some way, they all gave this feedback that we were not thinking big enough. We got this feedback repeatedly from so many people in that particular tour, that it actually stayed with me. And then I was thinking about it, that it's actually true. Like none of our businesses, we were not even confident of saying that we could build a billion dollar enterprise. There's just like almost a fear that, hey, if you say it, it might become true. And then what you do. It's, I think it's some sort of a psychological I don't even think it's an Indian women problem. Actually, this is, I think, just a global women problem of like sort of being super ambitious about just going out and doing it. I think we just negotiate too much with ourselves in our own head. And I just don't think that a lot of guys look at these things the same way. And I think what happens is that little bit difference in confidence is actually compounds over time. So I think that is actually something that you need to break that curve. That you have to flatten that curve also. You have to flatten that curve of that emotional disadvantage, that psychological disadvantage that we have of feeling like we can just build large enterprises. And I don't have great solutions for it, but I do think that's a disadvantage that many of us bat from day one.
Absolutely agree to the fact that you've raised. I think it's our own barriers that we have to break, and the glass ceiling where we have to reach and break that as well. Well said. Pallavi, I think we can move on to you now. Your personal story of being at advantage at some situation and disadvantages at some situation as a woman entrepreneur?
I don't know if I would say it's a disadvantage, but so one time I was just pitching in front of a group of people, and then I told them that I really want to make a sustainable business and a profitable business. I want to earn money out of it, and then they were like, "Okay, but you're a women entrepreneur. Why do you want to earn money? You should do some social NGO." And at that moment, it really hit me. I'm like, wait. Can women not make money? I mean, is it only a men thing? Why should we just always do NGO, right? So I think that's a stigma I have, and I've, maybe it's just my problem, but I've faced it multiple times in my journey, that people have really questioned my thought of making money. So I think that's one, and another definitely. I agree with Suhani. So I was at an investor pitch, and he asked me about and I was pitching, and he asked us about the algorithm, looking at my other founder who is a male, and I was standing right there, and I was like, okay, I know the algorithm. I also wrote it, so I am a computer science engineer. You can just ask me. But he constantly kept on looking at the male founder, and I mean, so he was literally expecting my co-founder to speak, and then I started to speak, and I was like, no, look at me and talk to me. So, I mean, there are challenges, but we just have to find our way to work through them. At the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do, right? So, and there are advantages. So one of the biggest advantages what WEQ, was there, especially for women entrepreneurs, and I met these amazing women. And similarly with some other communities that are women focused, they kind of help women. So there you come across a lot of similar mindset people whom you make long lasting relationships with. So that's one advantage we get. So
yeah. Thanks, Pallavi. I think what an amazing piece of advice that you have given while sharing your experience, that you have to find your own way through challenges and reach the goal that you have set for yourself. I think we can continue to talk and talk. Just final thing, any final piece of advice that you would want to give our audience attendees today? We can go in the same order. Suhani.
I think I don't have so much of advice to share because I'm also in my journey, and every day we are also figuring out stuff. But I think, especially from an entrepreneurship standpoint, what we have realized is you just have to start. When we started the company or when we started this campaign, we didn't know where this would go. And on the way, kind of, if you're like resilient and, I think perseverance is the biggest word for like entrepreneurship. If you continue to be on it, you'll find like the right opportunities and the right things to spot. So I just like pass it on to Roli and Pallavi now.
Thank you. Roli, we can go with you.
It's a open-ended question. I don't know like what advice. Actually, it would be nice to in fact have this in the Q&A. If people have specific questions and advice in entrepreneurship, I think it'll be easier to answer that. But in absence of that, I agree. You just have to start. I mean, I just don't think there's a great time. Before getting married is not a good time, is as good a time as after getting married. Before the kids is as good a time as after the kids, before the kids have gone to college. There's just like no perfect time when you can start, because it is a longish journey. And I think you just need to be mentally ready to do it, because I think after a while, what happens, this home juggling thing becomes a little bit easier of the problem while you're managing all these external factors. So I do think, again, going back to that same point, I think we should just like not over negotiate in our own heads. If you have a little bit of a financial buffer, that you're not going to go hungry for the next 18 months if you don't get your paycheck. I think that sort of should be enough for most people to jump in and do whatever they've always wanted to do. Yeah, I think trying to time anything is just, I think it's fairly counterproductive.
Sure. Thanks, Roli. Pallavi, would you want to add anything on it, or we can open for Q&A?
I think I don't know what advice to give, but I think in my personal experience, I've just felt that there are a lot of people who will pull you down. And then there are also a lot of people who will help you pull yourself up and also your organization. So it's up to you to you have to have your judgment very clear that these are the people I want to associate with, and these are the people I don't really want to focus on. So it's up to you to kind of just keep them aside from your life and your operations. So, that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can open for questions. We just have 10 minutes to go. So, Padma, are there any questions that people have shared, or we'll
Shikha,
keep it open for people to say?
Shikha, I just had one more thing to add on the slide that Suhani is projected. Since we were talking about us coming together to do this, we can still use a lot more help. And I hope that the people who are listening to us are sort of motivated either by the story or by the cause that we are going after. And if you are looking for a way to sort of multiply your impact, I think we could be just, we could be a good starting point. So if you are keen to help, you can of course donate directly. And I think if we could share the link after this, Maggie or Padma, somehow it would be nice. There is interestingly, we have had a startup who actually donated 1 day of their salary to our campaign. So they made it a team effort, and that is sort of something that was unexpected, and it was really kind of them to do it. But to them also, they felt really good that rather than just one person donating, they all thought, hey, can we do this together? And so they did that. And I think that's a really clever way to sort of build a little bit emotion and team spirit into doing a little bit more for the COVID relief. I know a lot of people have already helped in some way, shape or form, but unfortunately the virus is not going away. So we need to do more. And lastly, we can also use some help on the beneficiary identification. So here, what I wanted to just take a moment to explain is that that if you are donating, let's say you donate or through a group of people you donate, but you say that, hey guys, we want to actually, let's say we want to support this municipal hospital in Pune, then we would be happy to actually divert the funds that you have donated in the form of masks to that particular beneficiary, as long as it's a municipal hospital or it's a community health group, or it is a police, a policeman and that affiliated sort of department. So that is something that we are doing as well. So for example, the company that donated to us more than 1 lakh rupees, they wanted most of the donations to be used in Mumbai because it's a Mumbai based company and they wanted to help the frontline workers in Mumbai being a hotspot. So we are going to ensure that, yes, we provide enough masks in Mumbai that cover the donation that they have given. So that's another way that you can sort of help both on the funding side as well as on the beneficiary identification side. So if you want to, Suhani could go to the next slide where there's like our contacts and stuff. Yeah. So our emails are here. And of course, I think since everybody's on this mailing list, how you got this email, you can always reach out to us via the WEQ folks as well. So yeah, please do reach out to us. Very happy to find more collaborators and who can help us take this mission forward.
Okay. So I think I would reiterate the same thing. If, from the attendees, anybody who wants to contact and contribute towards such initiative, please drop an email. All right. So we have one question posed by Shravya. Any plans for your next project post-COVID? I'm sure you guys must be busy thinking about what is the current situation, and I'm sure 2020 is gone in the current COVID situation. So not sure if you have thought about any other projects after COVID. But yeah, that's the question. Anyone who wants to take it? Suhani, Roli, Pallavi?
I'm on unmute, so let me just carry on for a bit. It's I don't know if the questioner wanted to ask about social projects or what kind of projects that they wanted to know. So you can explain.
It's a very generic question. Just talking about the next project. Not talking specifically about any social project or.
Yeah, for myself, I am beginning to think about my next startup. So that's sort of going to be my next big project.
I think for us, the project is like an extension of this. So right now we are only doing like production in Mumbai and trying to reach out to as many people as possible. But like our sanitary napkin machine, we plan to identify more entrepreneurs who can do the production in their own like cities and hometowns to decentralize the manufacturing of surgical masks as well. So that's something that probably we'll be doing for the next 1 year.
And for me, I already have a company that I'm running. So as I mentioned, that it's we develop voice applications for enterprises. So customizing these smart devices for hotels specifically. But now we've also found an application in the healthcare industry, and we're also going after that market. So in terms of my company, I think we're branching out to other industries as well.
Thanks. Thanks, all. I think that's the only question I see for now. Padma, do you have visibility to any other people raising hands, or
I have posted it on the chat. I'm just waiting for people to open up and ask questions. We do have time, so feel free to use this time to interact live with the women entrepreneurs. This is a great chance rather than chatting in the chat window. I think if you'd like to speak, I can always help unmute and can go.
Absolutely, Padma, I would agree. I think it's a great opportunity to learn from all three women entrepreneurs who have got such an exposure working with so many diverse skill set people, departments, incubators, universities, and so many associations. It's a great opportunity to learn from them.
Yeah,
I have a question. If
sure, Maggie. Yeah, Maggie.
So when I started my entrepreneurship journey, I ran my own company for 5 years before starting with Anitabi. It was a software product company. So one of the best advices my friend gave was an important thing in entrepreneurship is not just knowing what to do. It is also about knowing what not to do. Where you don't, because you feel like you're on your own and the whole world is yours and it's just possible to spread yourself too thin. Experientially, I just wanted to ask if any of you have felt that, and any lessons, what you did which you should not have done, or you're wise enough not to do it. One of the two, either.
I have moved out of my startup, so I have a huge number of things that you shouldn't do. But I think the biggest one I would say is that if you need a co-founder, first of all, you should have a co-founder, because otherwise it's kind of like really lonely to do all this yourself. It's not fun after a while. So I think it's good to have a co-founder. But it is, with that advice, I think it is also important that you have a really good co-founder. Otherwise, you'd rather do it alone or not do it at all. And I think it's who is a good co-founder is a very tough question actually to know on day one. So all you kind of know is a lot of other things except that if this person is going to be a good co-founder. So I think if you can de-risk that by doing whatever it takes in the beginning, it's really, really helpful. Like, do projects together without, even coming up together for these kind of causes kind of gives you an idea of how people operate, right? So you have been in some sort of other activities together, or you just knowing each other for a long time, I think just is not always enough to be good co-founders. So I think that's a really, really crucial thing to sort of be very careful of whenever you are embarking on that journey and with a bunch of people, because it's always the journey is going to be longer than what you want it to be, or what you planned or anticipate. So I think how you work together is very key, I think.
Sorry, I got disconnected from the call, joined back again. I was watching the video, but not.
I think Maggie, what you said about spreading yourself too thin, and I think there's so many people who are just there to just give advice. That's also one big challenge that we have come across, because you go to these networking events and everyone, irrespective of how many number of years or continuously I'm working on this idea, someone always feels that we should do something completely different. So I've heard this so many times, that why are you not creating an online brand of pads and like do like a premium segment? That way you'll always get like more VC funded, because it's easier to scale and stuff. People have even told us that, why are you doing manufacturing when you can get stuff from China? So that's been like, we keep hearing those things so many times, that cater to the premium segment, and like there are so many brands which are already there. It's not really a big problem in that segment. So why, it's just replicating some model of the US in India. That's something that I've heard so many times, that I'm just some, at least in my earlier years, I would actually go in the self-doubt. Are we doing the right thing or not? Or, why are so many people saying something like this? But I think sometimes it's very important to, just like Pallavi was also saying, there would be like many different types of people. You need to find people who are like generally like largely aligned with what you're doing and listen to their advice. And also like, see who is actually advising you, how successful they are, or how similar in terms of the industry or experience they are, because a lot of successful people in a completely different industry may not have the right advice for you.
Right.
Yeah, and
Absolutely, Suhani. We have one more question if from the audience. How do you manage life and children when you do not have much family support? I think very valid question coming from women.
Roli, please take this question. I think you're the most experienced.
I think Pallavi wanted to add something in the previous question. Pallavi, do you want to?
No, I was just actually, from what advice Maggie, asked us to think upon. I think as founders, and especially for me, I've been very attracted at a lot of times, there's so much you can do. You can really branch out to so many different, even in entrepreneurship, there's so much things that you can do, that you really, start to lose your mind. And at some point it becomes very important to rethink everything again, and just limit it and have a very sharp focus that, okay, no, I'm just gonna just not think about the other things that are going in the left and right, and this is what I have chosen to do, and I'll keep on doing that. And I think that's been very helpful for us to find a lot of different solutions. And I think, yeah, it's a very decent advice to give someone, that just be focused, don't just spread your wings too much.
True.
Shika, there is one more question on the chat.
Yeah.
I can help.
But I think Rolly was going to talk about the children's lesson.
Yeah, Rolly was going to discuss.
Yeah, I have to, guys. I have to, in case anybody's thinking it's difficult, it's not, it's not easy. But actually, I think it's really, so I want to go back to Suhani's point on too much advice, right? I think pretty much whatever I'll tell you now, it's going to be a very one-dimensional advice to you. So because you're not in it, and I don't know your situation, whoever has asked is actually an anonymous attendee who has asked to make it worthwhile. I would just ask you to reframe it, in fact, that if you really wanted to do something yourself, or whatever, it could be a company, it could be another, some social endeavor, whatever, you just want to go out and study for a year and you have kids at home, right? I just want you to reframe it, that just list down the 5 things that you need to do to make that work. I don't think any other person's advice is going to be correct in any other person's situation. So just write down for yourself, because you have to be the number one problem solver if you're venturing on your own. So this is in fact the first problem you'll need to solve for yourself, is that if I wanted to do it by myself and I don't have much family support, these are the 5 things that I will need to take care of. pretty soon you'll realize actually 5 May, the 4th and 5th are really not even that necessary. It's about like, you know, liking a certain kind of food that you want to eat every day. No, you can't. You like, you know, you just like get the best food, best healthy food that you can, and maybe that's good. But if that food issue is in the top 3, then you'll have to sort of solve it in some way that works for you. But I do think that if you reframe this in a way of how you will solve it, I think there is a way to solve it. So I can just share, like, from my own experience. I do have family support, but the reason actually I have family support is that I've always wanted to be doing something ambitious and on my own. And I always felt that with kids, the only way to do it is that if you have the right kind of family support, and I'm lucky to have that. But that also means that I actually don't venture much in the kitchen. Not before lockdown, I was very happy to ask at the end of the day, "Aaj khane mein kya hai?" So I think you just need to demarcate what you want to spend your time thinking every day. But I think you can solve it. It is not such a big thing to solve. If you really wanted to solve it, you can just pick out from those 5, what are the 3 main things that will help you take that first step, and then everything is going to sort of fall in place.
True. I hope that answers your question.
I hope that answered that. I wasn't an answer, but I hope it gives some framework of thinking, which may be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you mentioned, Roli, very rightly, every problem is unique and every situation is unique. So every person is dealing with one or the other different situation, which is unique in itself. So you will have to pen down as to what exactly are your main challenges that you would want to address. So you have to get the number one problem solver.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any other open question. Padma, anything that you see raising hands from the audience?
There is a question in the chat. I'm going to read that out from Rustika Meshram. Let me see if she's around. I can try to allow her to speak. Yeah. Rustika, you want to ask your question live? Okay, I'll read out the question till the time. I graduated last year, so a bit new to professional world, and it seems quite dominant on the male side. So whenever have an idea or a new solution to something, people always take away the credit. Could you please share how to overcome this? When we have an idea for entrepreneur, how to take it to the right person to make it successful? I think she's unable to talk, so she has sent the question. Hope I read it out in a manner which all could understand. She basically wants to understand how to, bring her, how to add value to her solution or an idea rather than anyone taking credit.
So I would actually like to answer the first part of the question, because I myself am quite young. I recently graduated, and while I was doing this company, I have also myself felt that across in my journey, that a lot of times people come and they try to dominate you. They try, "Oh, you are just so new, you don't know how to do things the right way. Let me just tell you, let me just guide you through it." And then they make it their own and take away the credit. So I absolutely feel that, and this used to happen to me earlier as well. Because I was like, "Oh yes, maybe I don't really know anything. Okay, yes, you have to tell me how do this work. Tell me how should I do it the right way." And sometimes you just make yourselves too vulnerable to the person, that they have they get the right to take the advantage of it. So I think what I have learned the hard way is that you should not let this affect you. Just take this out of the mind that you're new to professional world. You really have to take it out of your mind. Think like you are who you are, irrespective of your age or irrespective of your past experiences. if something is unique to you, don't get intimidated by old people. Or super experienced people. It's okay to be inspired by them, but I think being intimidated and making yourself vulnerable is not the right way. So just a little advice from a young entrepreneur.
That's wonderful, Pallavi. Roli and Suhani, you can also add to it if you would like to share any of your views on it.
I liked her second question a lot, where she says that who can I take it to make it successful? If you had to take it to one person, please take it to a customer. There is nobody else who can make it successful. You get to the first customer, then you get to your second customer, and then you keep getting your customers, and that's the only definition of success.
I think both of you have summed it up really well, so I don't have anything to add to this.
Rustika, hope that answered your question, and it got a lot more clarity to all of us, I think. So any other questions? We do have time to take, so you can share your questions. So while we wait for those questions, Suhani, I had a question myself to you, looking at the products and the things, right? So most often, I think it is regional based. The products are available to the Mumbai region, or how do I make it? I know the products are also available online and things like that. How do I make it available to a local, people who are in really need of that product? Do I have to order and make it available to them, or if I give you be it masks or sanitary pads? So if I have a connect with an NGO that I'm volunteering, or a school run for underprivileged children, so how do I take it to those places?
Yeah, I think in general, like logistics and transportation is still working. So apart from Mumbai, we also donated our masks to Kerala police station as well, and we are planning to do it in a few other states, and even with Pallavi in Agra. So logistics and transportation does work, but it's because in general it is a volume dependent product, right? So if I only send one box of masks, of 10 masks or something for an individual, it is extremely expensive to send it from Mumbai to, say, for example, in Bangalore. So that's why there are middlemen who come in who would, get from a Mumbai factory in bulk in few lakhs and then go and divide. And that's why the margin keeps getting added. So from a perspective of actually helping a hospital or an NGO, it may make sense to actually accumulate a demand of, say, for example, 10,000 masks or something between few NGOs and a few hospitals. And then we would be like very happy to supply it to one location and then localize the distribution. So you kind of become the middle person who is.
Yeah, that is doable. Okay. Yeah, that answers. Thank you.
Yeah, a big thanks from all of us to the three of you and Shika. And Shika specifically stepping in the last minute when our original moderator could not join due to a medical emergency. So a big thanks to Shika for doing that. And our wonderful audience. Just let you know, we should soon be sharing the recording also so that a larger population can see the video. So hopefully it should be available in the next couple of weeks. And as we thank our team who came and shared their inspiring story, it is also a call to all attendees to see how they want to help and contribute such a cause. It's just an amazing story, but it's also very, very relevant for the times. And this is one way for us to take part in some of the solutions that today's world needs. So please do support. All right, so great. Have a great Friday evening and a great weekend, all of you. Always good to see you. So thank you so much for your time.